Hey guys, Easy here. In this video, I'll be going over the build and how it works. I'll also be going over frequently asked questions and hopefully answering everything. I'll also be adding timestamps, so feel free to scrub through the video to the parts you're more interested in. For the stat breakdown, you mainly only need 54 strength, 205 dexterity, and the rest into intelligence. This is because of the benefit that we gain from the Olroth Timeless Jewel. Even if you do not have it yet, you'll still dump into intelligence. As for the gear, starting off with weapon set 1, we have Trenchtimbre. This is mainly because of the +3 minion stat on here, and it also allows us to use Wind Dancer. The +3 gives us more energy shield from Grim Feast. For the helmet, it's pretty simple. You're looking for a high energy shield helmet with +2 to all minion skills, as well as any resistances that you need to cover. The rarity here is optional, so not needed. As for our rings, the primary stat that we're looking for is chaos damage, evasion rating, dexterity, intelligence, and elemental resistance. And you'll be doing this on a breach ring with defense modifiers plus 50%. You can use a different ring, however using a breach ring is probably best as you can get your evasion rating to ridiculous levels. So the original stat on here is 203 evasion rating, but it can go up to 304 with the 50% increase. As for the amulet, it is just a 46 spirit amulet with maximum energy shield, increased evasion rating, intelligence, and +3 to all minion skills. If I could get this, I would probably get strength or dexterity on this amulet as well. And for your anointment, you can anoint lasting trauma or any defensive anointments that you would prefer. For your chest piece and boots, obviously we're going to be using Queen of the Forest as well as Corpse Wade as for the boots. For Corpse Wade, I ended up getting a Lightning Resistance Corrupt. This is not needed, but I needed it to kind of fill out the rest of my resistances. And for the chest piece, I ended up getting a high defense evasion rating chest piece because I am too poor to afford a good corrupted 1% movement speed for every 390 evasion chest piece. But that is something that you should be working towards too, and will give you a lot of movement speed down the line in the future. For my gloves, all I'm using is high evasion gloves, with the dexterity being an important stat on these gloves, as well as any resistances that you need to fill out. And for our belt, the famous Ingenuity, this has a +1 maximum endurance charges corrupt. You don't need this. I tried going for a higher bonuses gained from equipped rings corrupt, however I ended up with this, so that's currently what I'm using. As for my Sceptre, I have 168 spirit on it with +5 level to all minion skills, and minions have 50% increased maximum life. You don't need anything else on this. Just try to get your spirit so that way your second weapon set reaches a spirit of 309 spirit or a little bit over. Moving over to our skills, we have Decompose. Decompose comes with Extraction, Deadly Poison, Comorbidity, and Concentrated Effect. We used Extraction because of how Chaos Inoculation works for us. We don't actually take the 10% of life on use damage, and we just get the 25% of damage as extra chaos for free. For Deadly Poison, this is technically not a 75% more magnitude of poison, just because of the 25% less damage with hits. Although Decompose is not necessarily a hit, for some reason you still get the 25% less, so it's more like a 35% more increase. For Comorbidity, we use this to get up to 8 poisons. There could be the argument that instead of using this, use something else and just use Snakebite gloves, or use this with the Snakebite gloves, but I'm not exactly too sure how you would sustain 10 poisons over 8, and I don't necessarily know what you would replace this with. I've tried other supports in the past, but still no luck. As for Concentrated Effect, it is simply just 40% more damage at the cost of less area effect, but we don't really care about that just because of how much area effect Decompose actually gains. Moving down to Despair, we use Despair. I'm currently experimenting with level 9 Despair using Heightened Curse, Cursed Ground, and Inspiration. Cursed Ground because mainly we'll only be using this for boss fights, and they seem to stand around in a singular location quite often, allowing you to get the full value of Cursed Ground rather than just, you know, missing your Despair by accident or whatever it might be to where you don't get the full duration. This is optional, of course. You can definitely use something else or just not use Cursed Ground at all. The reason why we use level 9 is due to the mana cost. I was using a level 20 before and then a level 19, but I'm not too sure if the extra chaos resistance is all too crazy. You can go for it, of course, if you're min-maxing damage. Just watch out for your mana because it'll cost about, 3/4 of your mana per cast, so make sure you don't miss. For Eye of Winter, we use the lowest level possible. This is for mana cost issues, and we don't necessarily need quality on it either. I put in 10%, I think just cause, but you can put in the full 20% or not, up to you. It comes with Withering Touch, and Withering Touch here only works if Eye of Winter has a way of dealing chaos damage. As you can see, it does 2 to 3 chaos damage, and that's enough to proc a Withering Touch. Eye of Winter can only do chaos damage if you have pure chaos as a node, or if you're using Against the Darkness. In this case, we're using Against the Darkness. That gives us 4% of damage as extra chaos on our notables. So if we see Event Horizon, we gain 4% of damage as extra chaos damage, and we also gain 1 Spaghettification here. Interfaith actually doesn't get the advantage because it's not necessarily in its radius, but these two nodes are more than enough to get Withering Touch to actually proc on Eye of Winter. We also use Unleash. Unleash is mainly because we can cast 1 Eye of Winter, but Unleash lets us do 3 at a time, I believe, which guarantees the rapid buildup of Withering Touch up to 70% effectiveness. Pierce may need to go through the enemy and not necessarily explode, and this is usually used when you got multiple bosses, or even like a rare or something that you want to try to kill a bit quicker. For Persistence, we're using Persistence on Eye of Winter, mainly to get our Wither duration up to 8.12 seconds, because without it, it is at 5.8. And just to go over this a little bit, we want to have the similar duration of Wither as to our Decompose on our second weapon set of 7.4 seconds. And for Wind Dancer, the supports I use are Blind, Maim, and Pin. I'm not exactly too sure if Pin even does anything, but Maim and Blind are definitely free. You'll always blind enemies whenever they do hit you with Wind Dancer, and they'll always maim enemies if they do hit you. And Wind Dancer, we want to get it to the highest level possible, so I ended up getting mine up to level 20 plus 1 with Corruption, and that gives us 20% more evasion rating per stage, which is great because that means we get 80% at 4 stages. For Plague Bearer, it's simple. You're supposed to use a level 20 with plus 1 from Corruption if you can. This is your best outcome because it'll have the most damage possible that we can get it at without sacrificing Physical Mastery from Skeletal Brute. For the supports, Chaos Mastery as well as Astral Projection, I would suggest getting a third support, and I would slot in Mobility for this because without Mobility, you do slow down quite a bit whenever you're using Plague Bearer, but it's not necessary. For Grim Feast, just try to get as high level as possible. Level 20 isn't necessary, so you could do level 19 plus 1 Corruption and you'll be more than fine. And the reason why we do this is because we want to get our Grim Feast to a high enough level possible, so that way our Grim Remnants actually recover a lot of Energy Shield. This is one of our main forms of survivability, and if you look here it says 783 Energy Shield, and then in our second weapon set we actually get, let me take a look here. You actually get 1023 because it gets up to level 30. Now, if this were level 31, I think that goes up to 1100 Energy Shield. It's quite crazy. It grows up pretty exponential. For Charge Infusion, I got mine to level 20 plus 1 from Corruption with 20 quality, of course. All of these gems, just going over them, all have 20 quality, simply because you get a lot of defenses from Charge Infusion, and for some reason, if we were to look at the skill, it just consumes 1 of each charges every 5.8 seconds, and it tells us that you get 20% more crit per power charge, 18 more defenses, sorry, not per power charge, it says 20% more crit chance while you have a power charge, 18 more defenses while you have endurance charges, and 13% more skill speed while you have a frenzy charge. However, if we go look at the actual skill side, this side here, it actually says more defenses with endurance charges, 36%. So we actually get a 36% more multiplier to our defenses, I believe, which actually increases it quite a bit and gets us up to like 80,000 plus evasion during mapping, which gets our movement speed up pretty high. Sacrifice, there's not much to go over. It's just, level 18 Spirit Gem plus 20 quality. For our Skeletal Brute, we have it as high of a level as possible, so that is level 20 plus 1 Corruption, and you only need 3 supports. Your first support will be Meat Shield, second Minion Mastery, and Physical Mastery. This makes sure that this allows our Skeletal Brute to have the most levels possible. So in our main hand, we're at level 34, and in our offhand, we are at level 36. If I were to utilize Trenchtimbre, you can see it goes up to level 39. My Trenchtimbre is only plus 3. If you were to get a plus 4, you could get it to its max level of level 40. And that makes its maximum life pretty high up there. However, I've only really experimented with using Trenchtimbre in bosses a few times. It does work well, but right now the maximum life is 95,000 without it. And for the last setup, cast on Minion Death. You do want this at level 19. You can get it to level 20, not recommended though, and your quality plus 20%. How I set this up, so you see how Overcharge is grayed out, and if I were to put in Lightning Warp, Ball Lightning, you see Profusion is grayed out. Overcharge will only activate when your Lightning Warp bossing setup is on, and then your Profusion will only activate once you have Profane Ritual slotted in. Now how do you get these in? So I'm going to remove all support gems, right? And most people are doing this, and they're trying to slot this in, and they say that this support can't be socketed into the skill. So then they ask me, how do I slot this in? So come back here, you're going to be putting in Profane Ritual, putting in Lightning Warp, and then you'll be putting in Profusion, Magnified Effect, Overcharge. You could have Magnified Effect over here, and it lets you slot in all your supports. So now once you move to your mapping setup, you'll see only Profusion is enabled, Overcharge isn't enabled but remains there, and when you go to your bossing setup, Profusion is disabled and Overcharge is enabled. One last thing I wanted to go over, for bossing, you can use Ghost Dance as a swap instead of using Charge Infusion, and Ghost Dance will make it so if you do take a hit and your health drops down to below your energy shield, so 2100, you'll just get that energy shield back due to how much evasion we actually have. So it is a little bit more survivability, but if you do take more damage than 2000 energy shield without your overflow, you will just die anyways. So technically, this is up to you. Ghost Dance swap is okay if you don't have high evasion or if you're not comfortable with the fight. Otherwise, you can just leave it as Charge Infusion, and so that way you don't have to worry about less swaps when moving from mapping to single target. For this last bit, I just wanted to go over some of the frequently asked questions that you guys have been asking in my past videos, and this will just kind of go over and hopefully answer every single one of your questions. How are you summon minions if they are on a timer? Every 133 server ticks, 4.4 seconds given around. You can swap and resummon your minions regardless of the timer. We completely bypass it by swapping. My mana is being drained every time cast on Minion on Death activates. Use lower level skills in your COMD. Timeless Jewel. Should I buy the same number that you have? No, it's not needed. It randomizes the notables and not the keystone. You mainly use it for the keystone. I haven't found a proper seed yet that contains what notable passive transformations that I want. Why do you require the same energy shield on your shield? Well, you lose energy shield when you swap. This was caused by an update in 0.1.1. How do you have so many minion levels? 20 levels from Skeletal Brute Gem, plus 1 from Corruption, plus 2 from supports, plus 5 from the Sceptre, plus 3 from Prism of Belief, plus 3 from Amulet, and plus 2 from Helmet. How much spirit is needed? In set 1 you need exactly 120 spirit, and in set 2 you need exactly 309. You'll have probably more spirit on your set 1, given if you're using a spirit amulet. So, Trenchtimbre on weapon set 2 makes Decompose and Sacrifice not work. Yes, it is currently bugged. You need to cast a spell or order your minions to move if you're doing this. That'll make the Decompose actually consume your minions. Megalomaniac suggestions? I'll have a link in the description for a trade filter for Megalomaniac for a few selections of or combinations of notable passives that can be helpful for this build. However, I think that the best in slot is likely Holy Protector, Sturdy Ally, and Void. That'll probably be multi-mirror Megalomaniac. I'm following the guide and I have all skill points allocated but still have points available. Yes, the tree is tuned to level 94. Also, the From Nothing is likely why. Basically, from Nothing on Oasis, I have about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have about 8 points allocated here, so, that's likely why you're missing some points. Why do I feel so squishy? Well, you need to have around 70,000 evasion for this to actually kind of feel good, with about 2,000 energy shield. The reason why I say 70,000 evasion is that it gives you enough movement speed, and it also makes it so that if you do get hit, your evasion is still over the 95% threshold. And yeah, make sure that also when you're running around and you're taking some potential hits from projectiles or whatever it might be that you're dodging, your evasion entropy value is actually going up. So try to avoid as much as possible using your movement speed. Don't sit in crowds and you should be fine. The last time I've died was when I was testing against Arbiter of Ash, which was, I would say a couple days ago. I've only had 39 deaths on this character so far. Why are we taking Resonance? Well, it's so that Profane Ritual also provides endurance charges rather than power charges. Will you be making a budget version of this build? I'm unsure. It's difficult to make a budget version for this because of the amount of uniques that you need to use. But you can technically scale this down and build this as a something that you're building towards, right? Like you obviously don't need the old raw timeless jewel. That is something that you can pick up way later down the line, and you obviously don't need the Prism of Belief. However, those things are great for survivability and as well as your damage, right? So there's things that aren't mandatory, but definitely feel better once you acquire them. Would Snakebite gloves be technically more damage for single target? Yes, if you can get your poison duration over 4-ish seconds. The reason why I say this is because it's rather inconsistent to keep your poison stacks over 8 if you're only using 3 brutes to explode. If you're using more than 3 brutes to explode, something like 5 or 6, this would be fairly easy to do. Lastly, I'm just going to be going over the jewels that I use, the unique and the rare ones. Against the darkness, I went over this earlier, but you need to get the 4% of damage as extra chaos, and any resistance of your choice really that you're missing. We get the damage as extra chaos again to make sure that Eye of Winter is proccing Withering Touch. Megalomaniac, mine has Sturdy Ally and Void. Again, I mentioned that I'll have a link down in the description with a trade filter going over the best possible options that you can get for this jewel. This is your old raw timeless jewel. You don't need to have the same number that I have. We mainly only use this for the keystone. Once I do find one that has the proper notables that I want, such as maybe like a 3 combination Summer Meadows, I'll likely let you guys know what the seed of that jewel is. Prism of Belief, straightforward stuff, +3 to Skeletal Brute minions. This is just for more HP. The Oasis, from nothing. We use this to grab some nodes that we normally couldn't reach. Lastly, our rare jewels. I have one with +10 strength and one with +9 cold resistance. If you don't need the cold resistance, you can replace it with strength, intelligence, or dexterity. That is up to you as you're corrupt. But I'm using minions have 15% increased maximum life jewels. The rest of the stats are kind of useless, even the weapon swap. So the reason why I'm using minion life over the evasion ones that I previously mentioned in the guide is because that there's so little minion life nodes on the tree, and scaling that up actually increases our damage tremendously. So look out for these. So just to show you guys a quick example of how to map, basically whenever you see the first pack of monsters, you're going to weapon swap and weapon swap back quickly after they've been decomposed. That'll cause the contagion to pop and prolift the enemies. And from there on, you can just use Plague Bearer to clear some monsters that are in your way. And if you ever come across a rare, you just swap again and swap back to summon your minions and decompose them. So this is kind of a bad breach example, but so big prolift there from contagion, all the monsters just die, and you just kind of move freely through the map here. Trust in your evasion and in your Wind Dancer, so whenever you do get hit, all the monsters do get blinded, so nothing really matters in terms of things hitting you, as you know, it's not necessarily going to be an issue. And that's pretty much it, really. So, key points. Keep your Plague Bearer for dealing with packs that are further away, and, you know, whenever you get stuck. And then make sure that you're swapping every 4 to 5 seconds, because in combat you can only swap 4 to 5 seconds. Out of combat you can freely swap. And this is kind of a cool little thing too, is whenever you're not in combat and you want to build up your endurance charges, you can just spam your weapon swap a few times and then get into battle. As always friends, hope this guide was helpful and provided a more in-depth explanation to how this all works and how it's put together. Don't be shy to comment any question you might have down below, and if I missed anything, please let me know as well. I tried covering most if not everything in regards to this build and tried to keep it short, but alas we still end up with a 20-minute video. So for the next video, I will likely be making a showcase of all T4 bosses with this build. If you have any suggestions or things you want to see for future content and videos, let me know. As always, take care, and until next time.